the alter ego effect is really how to turn on and off a part of your persona, or an alter ego, if you will, when you need it the most to perform at your best. And so a lot of athletes use this. Beyonce is best known for her alter ego, Sasha Fierce. That's who goes on stage every time. It's not Beyonce, it's Sasha Fierce.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Eternal Optimist podcast. I am your host, Matt Drinkon, and here today we have a special treat. I have just been chatting for the past number of minutes with our guest for today, and she is an absolute rock star. I'm going to try to get through reading about this rock star that we're speaking with today. Her name is Marisa Moon, and Marisa is, I'll just read the biography is absolutely amazing. I'll just go and read this. As Google's #1 ranked intermittent fasting coach since 2018, Marisa Moon lines up with the top health and wellness coaches you should know through one-on-one and group coaching. She's on a mission to help others put an end to the confusion about what's healthy and finally experience results that last. Some of her most notable collaborations include being a coaching ambassador for LifeOmics Life Fasting Tracker app. That's just so freaking cool. She's on an app. This is awesome. Writing for the Primal Health Coach Institute blog and being a mentor for new health coaches at Flowell. Marisa is a national board certified health and wellness coach, a master primal health coach. Just get ready. She's super intense and really peaceful and chill. Just get ready. You're about to be blown away. As a dynamic, sought after speaker and podcaster, Marisa is becoming known for her intermittent fasting approach that emphasizes nutrient density and flexible, enjoyable fasting. Holy cannoli, I cannot wait for this discussion. Let's get into it. Welcome our guest today, Marisa Moon.
I feel like I'm at a pep rally. This is really something, Matt. Thank you. You're contagious.
Woo! Okay. Contagious in all the right ways, dear listener. Okay, good. So, it is kind of a pep rally. I'm getting ready for Hawk Fest tonight. That's my daughter at their elementary school. They have this big pep rally thing once a year. It's always in May, and always the first Friday, and that's tonight. So it is kind of a pep rally, Marisa. It is. We've got so much to talk about, and let's just start with this. I mean, we're going to go deep down the rabbit hole on some topics today around maybe some depression, talk about self-sabotage, just talk about some challenging things. And then we've got a lot to promote. We could talk about your book that just came out, your podcast, the way that you serve people in coaching. There's just so much. That's such a big palette of colors that we can paint with today. Let's start with this. Marisa, if you had to give the listeners just a couple of bullet points background of just you as a human, just what are like 2 or 3 different things that we should know for context as we dive in and get started today?
Well, my entire history leading up to now is someone who seeks novelty and new experiences. That's one of ADHD's best traits, if you ask me. And it's led me to different career paths and constantly wondering, like, what am I doing next? And for some people, that's anxiety producing, like you don't know where your, actions are leading you or what you'll be doing in 5 years. I'm not a 5-year plan person. I'm not a 10-year plan person. And I really have to go where my intrinsic motivation takes me. Life cannot unfold in any other way for me. And that was just a massive thing to learn to accept. And I'm lucky to have found the right partner to nurture that. And my parents have always been patient along the way as I figured out, like, what's Marisa up to. And I feel so blessed to have fallen into the path of health coaching. And it was through some of my own health challenges that I found this path. Of course, I never imagined it. I was a career bartender before I became a health coach. Some of my customers would say, we're going to detox to retox, because now that you're a health coach, you're going to help us detox. And then we're going to come back to the bar and we're going to retox. So, I mean, it is funny to think like how much my life has changed drastically because of this new journey into health coaching. But it's so fulfilling because I am a people person. I love seeing things from all different perspectives. I'm extremely compassionate and really find it endlessly nourishing for my curiosity to learn about other people's experiences. And I think that makes a great coach because we have to, be led by the client's uniqueness rather than leading them with our, expectations that we have as a coach. So.
Yes, thank you. And as someone else who's been told they have ADHD, and I tend to go off on whatever random rabbit hole just shows up as amazing and beautiful to me. One thing you just said is mutual for us. I also used to be a bartender back in the day, and I remember that was a very fond time in life. Learned a lot of good social skills at that time.
Right.
I learned how to, I learned how to talk to people, just randomly strike a conversation. That was good. Well,
Yes.
I would ask if you could take us back to the time of bartending. Was there a time that you just knew that being around people and just striking up conversations and serving them, was that something that you found in
Funny.
bartending or
It's
earlier?
It's actually due to when I was 16 years old, I answered this ad in the newspaper looking for MTV style dancers. And so I went to this audition. MTV was really badass back then, remember, Matt?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I was like,
don't date us.
so I was like,
Yes.
heck yeah, I'm interested. I just got my driver's license. My parents somehow approved me to drive to this audition. And it
Yeah.
was actually for this interactive DJ company that's very popular in Jewish communities for like bar mitzvahs and weddings and like business corporate events. They hire these interactive DJ companies to host the entertainment for their entire party. And I was a crowd motivator. That was my job. So like,
wow, what? Wow, super cool. A crowd motivator.
It was like some of the best memories of my life. I mean, at the time I was making $100 and something a party, which was big money when you're in high school.
Yeah.
And it was fun. Like I could go dance to make money and, motivate a crowd to dance with me. And I learned so many social skills with that because the boss would make you like, go get those people to dance or go talk to those kids over there and make sure they're having fun. And so I had to learn to like, push myself among strangers and like adapt to different personalities. And, just building rapport with strangers is a really valuable skill set because you can't force your own personality on another person. Rapport is not built that way. And so you sort of need to like feel out what their interests are or the way they move or the energy they come with. And it's empowering as a young person to build that into your repertoire of social skills. And so I think it was from that. And then I actually became an esthetician after dropping out of college 3 times. And I was working in a spa and I was like pretty into it at first because there was so much to learn. And I started training other people in my spa and going to like nationwide events to train my team really young, 19, 20, 21 doing this.
Wow.
But it became very boring because my ADD. So eventually I was like, I'm sitting in a dark room all day that's candlelit and I can't like be giving facials all day. Like it's just not enough for me. I need to be more interactive.
Okay.
So just around the time I turned 21, my family owns a banquet hall, and that's where I learned to bartend. And that's how it all began down that path. I was like, this is so fun and making a lot of money.
Yeah, well, wow, what a cool story to start. The interactive DJ, you were the crowd motivator. That's definitely something I want to put in the show notes. Crowd motivator. Make sure you grab that team. That's cool. I felt that energy when you joined the room, and I feel that energy in all your pictures. Just everything about you is that motivator. So it's definitely aligned. But then you said you dropped out of college 3 times.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Dropping out of college 3 times.
That's part of my story that I think is going to be key for this conversation today. I had no idea I had ADHD growing up. And so it's very common in girls, especially, to go undiagnosed into adulthood.
Okay.
A lot of women are actually getting diagnosed in their 60s now. And oh my gosh, what life-altering information to get your hands on at that stage in life. I was depressed starting maybe my junior year of high school. And I didn't know I was depressed. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I just didn't want to go to school for the first time. I would cry to beg to stay home. We had an open campus and I had my own car. So I would leave. I would just sit in my car any chance I got. I would leave any chance I got. I lived 5 minutes away. So even if I only had a 15-minute break, I would go home and come back. Yeah. And the only reason I went back was because I was in music and choir and show choir. And so I would go back for those classes. And I was an A student, but so it's all like very confusing. Like it doesn't sound like a kid that doesn't want to go back to school. And my parents were at work trying to deal with me, calling them, crying, please call them, tell them I can't come in. They didn't know what was going on. Nobody did. But I was kind of like rebellious and my parents were like fed up with me at that time too. So I'm sure they just chalked it up as she's being naughty and like doesn't want to listen to us or do the
What
right
does
thing.
rebellious mean in your lens? Because I'm a straight up nerd, and rebellious to me is staying out 2 minutes past the curfew. So what does rebellious mean?
No, me, I was like, my first cigarette I smoked was 13 years old. The first time I drank, I was probably 15. And
Okay.
that's like a lot for a young teen and for their parents to kind of realize. And then I didn't lie too much. I tried lying and got caught, and I didn't like that. Nobody did in my family. I lied about where I was going. I had them drop me off somewhere, and then I went somewhere else. But that pattern didn't continue. It was just really like two strong personalities, me and my mom. She didn't know she has ADHD. My dad was never diagnosed with ADHD. So we have all these ADHD personalities. Dad's at work all the time. And me and mom are just like two females with hormones flying all over the place, screaming at each other. We're Italian. We talk, we yell, we are very intense, very dramatic. So two dramatic Italian women and teens, like just boom, boom, boom all the time. And so by rebellious, I mean, I caused a lot of tension in the household by my big personality and defiance, or most importantly, I guess it was a lot of my mom telling me to clean up something and I wouldn't do it. I would just cry and beg that she lets me go out with my friends. And I would say she's the worst. I hate her. And why is she making me stay home? And she would say, you have to clean your room or you can't go out. And I didn't know how to clean my room, but I also didn't know to ask how to clean it. I just said, I can't. And she would be like, what are you talking about? You just don't want to. So that's a very typical ADHD trait of a young one that is undiagnosed, is just not knowing how to do things, but not knowing how to ask, not recognizing that they don't have the skills. So I didn't know how to clean. I didn't know how to organize things. I didn't know how to tackle a unsurmountable task like a huge pile of unfolded clothes, or, just things were in piles in my bedroom. That's how I lived. And my parents didn't want to live that way. And so it was just my room that was like that. And they would say, you can't go out until you do your room. And I would just sit there among the piles and just cry and say my mom's the worst. And I thought I was being treated unfairly. But, in adulthood, I could see I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to do.
Wow. That is so deep. And I thank you for sharing that, because I have 3 young daughters and they're just like me. Their energy, there's some defiance. And by the way, I like a little defiance because as an entrepreneur, I tend to not color within the lines. So part of that defiance is actually, I think it's kind of healthy, because you've turned that defiance into learning, it feels like. And now it's a positive thing. You just have to catch up to it and learn it.
Exactly.
Well, so you have a journey right there at that young age with depression in junior year. Take us forward a little bit on that depression and help us understand what happened next, Marisa.
Yeah. So I was excited to move out as soon as I graduated high school. My mom was excited too. She was like, bye, good luck. Like, you're going to see how hard it is without me. And so I moved in with a cousin for maybe just 6 months or something before I went to college. And I was excited. I went downtown to Columbia College in Chicago.
Wow.
And great school. But the problem with that school is there's not really a campus, and your campus is downtown Chicago. And there's like buildings all over the city. And, I had to take the train and buses and things I'd never done before. And I also, at Columbia, when you're a freshman, you're in classes with seniors. You can take your courses that go with your major, your electives, when you're a freshman. And other colleges aren't really like that. So that was something you see as an advantage. But when you have ADHD and bad self-discipline and self-regulation, and then all the temptation of the city, the seniors inviting me to parties or shows or concerts or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that instead of doing my homework. Oh yeah, I'll do that instead of going to class. Oh yeah. So I was just so impressionable and excited to be free and downtown and all of that. And so it was difficult to juggle everything. And these classes were intense. Like, I was a fashion major. I worked in retail along with crowd motivating in high school. And I loved working in retail. I loved being around clothing and helping people pick out clothes. So I decided to go into fashion as a major. And Columbia is great for that. But the problem is, in some of my classes, remember before Macy's was Marshall Fields, and downtown Chicago had the flagship Marshall Fields department store. And it was like 6 levels in downtown Chicago, or 11, maybe 10. And like on the 10th floor was one of my classes. inside Marshall Fields for college, I had a class with the lead designer of XOXO handbags. And XOXO, when you're a teenager, was like the coolest brand designer. And
Wow.
so like I'm in this class with the lead designer and all these people who know already how to sew and do all these things. And I was going there to learn how to do that. So I felt totally like massive imposter syndrome and like literally no skills to step into the room with. And so that was overwhelming. But add on top of it, you know how college is, you're going to get all your finals at the same time, all your projects at the same time, and they don't care if you have another class or 5 other finals to do. And so by the end of the first semester, I was just crying every day, like could not get through the finals, like barely even made it through the skin of my teeth, got D's in a couple classes, C's in a couple classes. And so it was just like freaking so overwhelming and just intimidating, defeating. I don't know. And so I ended up the second semester crying in the office. I mean, the first semester crying in the office of the counselor. That was like, you know, you would go to talk to someone about what your classes are going to be the next semester. So during that session, I just like started bawling because I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what to do. And she was like, do you think you can finish your finals? And I was like, I have to, like, I might fail, but I'm just going to try. And then at the start of the second session, they had assigned me to a therapist in the school. And she was working with me, thinking it was depression and anxiety. No ADHD was mentioned yet. And so this went on until I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't step foot into school. I'd cry in my car or wouldn't make it to the bus because I would just cry in my room. And so they diagnosed me with chronic depression, and I dropped out of college that semester, the second semester. And this pattern repeated. I did, start to feel better on my own, dropped out of school, felt better, worked on what is depression, learning more about that. And then by the fall, I was like, I'm ready to try again. Let's try a cheaper school. My poor parents, let's try a school that doesn't cost so much money, and let's try to switch majors because I felt like, maybe fashion wasn't right for me. And so I always loved music. I went to Northeastern in Chicago, Northeastern University for elementary music major. And I went back to like playing instruments again and just being like, trying to embrace something that I knew I loved. But the exact same thing happened. By the time of finals, I was crippled by anxiety going to class. And then I was seeing therapists full time. My depression kicked in like crazy. Second semester, I dropped out. So same exact thing happened. And I took an entire year or so off and decided to go to trade school to be an esthetician. I went to the Aveda Institute. Yes. I really excelled at that. It was a 1-year program. There's only like 10 people in my class, very immersive learning. And that was the right environment for me to complete and achieve my degree. Still had no idea I had ADHD though. So down the line, after I became an esthetician, I also then became a bartender. And I was a bartender for probably like 4 years downtown Chicago at some of the best places. I got really lucky training with my family at the banquet hall and then taking some jobs in Chicago as a server and telling them I'm a bartender too. And eventually got my foot in the door at some awesome downtown Chicago spots. And I loved it. Eventually I met someone else who had ADHD, took medication for it. And she talked to me about like why it helps her. And one day I tried her medication and I was like, holy shit, this makes me feel like myself, the lights are on. 'Cause it's really weird when I'm myself, I'm very outgoing and very dynamic and excited about life and engaging. But when I'm without dopamine or without medication, without understanding I have ADHD, when I'm depressed, it's like I'm completely withdrawn from life, just completely detached, zero energy or interest in anything. Yeah. And that's sad. Like it's depressing by nature. It's just awful. And so when I discovered that I share similarities with this woman I worked with, I was like, I should go see your doctor. So she gave me her doctor's information, her psychiatrist. I went to go see him and freaking ADHD with flying colors. Every single thing, you name it. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Yep. I've got it. So that was, pretty life altering for me and the family. Like, hey guys, this is why I was always depressed and dropping out of college. That's a very common history for a woman who's eventually diagnosed with ADHD or a teen. They usually have a history of depression or anxiety before the ADHD is discovered. Unfortunately, back in the day, they thought boys were more prone to have ADHD, and it's just because they had the more hyperactive, externalized behaviors and reactions to the disorder, whereas girls are more likely to be internalized with the experience. They think a lot about it, think, why don't people like me? What am I doing wrong? What do I have to do differently? And so there's a lot of self, reflection going on for a girl going through that, whereas a boy just expresses it as, let me get attention this way, let me get attention this way, let me see if people respond this way, and just kind of dopamine seeking in that way. So yeah, I'll stop for a second, take a breath and let that soak in. I know.
Yeah, that's deep. And so I wrote down a couple things here that I want to explore. One of the things was, we've been talking about ADHD and how that relates to depression and kind of feeling misunderstood and not being able to, keep things going to the next place in college because just we didn't know how. And, for those who don't understand ADHD, we've started to talk about the challenges. And once you're diagnosed, I'm wondering how you started to turn those challenges into your superpower.
Thanks.
Because I know you're like a superhero kind of. Like I'm going to give you superhero status because I know the woman I'm talking to right now has impacted so many. Well, and we're going to get to the book and the podcast and all of this.
Thanks.
But how did you learn to turn these challenges into strengths or into something you can do better with?
I will say it's quite empowering once you have that diagnosis, because there's a whole world of knowledge to dive into, understanding how your brain works differently than the average person. And what anyone should know in this conversation is the most impairing feature of ADHD in the brain is that we have impaired executive functions. Executive functions are the self-management systems and skills in the brain that happen in the prefrontal cortex. So the most advanced region in the brain that makes us human and helps us, manage multiple things, work with time, emotions, starting and stopping things appropriately, tuning out distractions, being able to you understand the passing of time is really lacking in the ADHD brain and executive functions. Being able to self-manage, like if you get interrupted, pulling your attention back, switching tasks, like if a meeting ends and you need to go to another or finish a task because you blocked this much time off, you need to start something else. Task initiation is really, really challenging for ADHD. There's many, many things that are all dependent on this communication center responsible for executive functions in the brain. And so once you understand that about your own brain, and then furthermore understand what the brain needs to fuel the prefrontal cortex, like what does my brain need so that blood flow is more efficient, so that the brain cells in the prefrontal cortex have enough nutrients and enough fuel to fire optimally. Like, what is Marisa's brain like when it is firing on all cylinders, and how can we achieve that? So that became a fascination of mine. Like, what does my brain need from me to thrive? I want it to be awesome, because when it is awesome, I feel awesome. So let's work towards that, right? So I'm learning a lot about it at this time, and it is so empowering. And I'm in the meantime, this is 26, 27 years old. I'm soon after diagnosed, I wasn't diagnosed, but I came down with the IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I had all these terrible GI symptoms that all of a sudden I was living with, just embarrassing gas. You don't want to leave the house, gut-wrenching pains, and unpredictable trips to the bathroom, even can ruin your pants kind of situations. So that's, as a young lady, and I was dating my now husband at the time, was just making you feel disgusted with your own body, ashamed of yourself, so many things you're going through with questions. And he's a doctor, and I'm asking him what the hell's going on with my body. He's like, I have no idea. So I'm like, I need to learn a little bit more about how my diet affects my digestive health. And so I was listening to podcasts. This was a long time ago. This was like 15 years ago almost. And I turned to podcasts for the first time. And I found these women talking about food sensitivities on the rise and how it's causing a lot of IBS symptoms and gut intolerance issues. And so I'm like listening to them. They're talking about the gut microbiome. Never heard of that before. And they're talking about dairy and gluten sensitivities. Never heard about those before. And I'm Italian. I'm like, are you kidding me? Gluten? Come on.
Come on.
No, right? Absolutely not. But then I heard enough callers calling in, sharing their stories, and these dietitians that hosted the show were sharing enough stories for me to realize I might have a gluten intolerance, and that might be exactly what's going on. And so I was like, holy crap, I need to consider removing gluten from my diet just to see if I feel any better. Okay. And so I did. I was like, nobody has to know. I'm just going to try it. And immediately my symptoms were relieved. It was pretty profound.
Like the same day, same week, same month?
The same day, no gas or sharp pains. And by day 2 or 3, no diarrhea. And it was just so exciting to discover that. But at the same time, I don't know, earth shattering to give up gluten at a time when stores barely even had gluten-free stuff. And nobody understood at restaurants. And I had to tell my family that one. That's not fun.
Yeah. So this suddenly came on at 26, 27-ish. This suddenly came on and you have all these gastrointestinal things. And then you get the diagnosis of, or you go and self-study and you find out about the gut microbiome and about gluten sensitivity, and you stop the consumption of things that have gluten, and all of a sudden, boom, you clear up and you're healthy again.
It's crazy.
Awesome. So you did all that though. You had to go and do the studying and figure all that out. And I want to honor you for that, because you're in the middle of this. Your body's messed up. It's embarrassing. It's challenging. It's painful. It's hard. And you went and you figured it out. And I believe I love you for that. It's so impressive to me that you found a way. You did the study and you found a way, and you weren't willing to just accept it.
I don't know, that a lot of people would choose that, just sort of self-driven solution route. I don't know why. I think I was just very interested in reading about health because I had already been reading about depression in the brain and all of that stuff. So I was curious and determined to find answers. So that led me to the Paleo and Primal and, sectors of health and wellness. Just for listeners, the Paleo movement was really booming around this time because people were thinking, what can we learn about our ancient ancestors, the way that they ate and the things that they did, the ways that they lived that promoted health and prevented disease that we're missing today as we introduce more processed foods and more industrialized things into our life. How is that affecting our health and disease states? And because gluten is a new sort of intolerance that we've developed as a species, it's often talked about in the paleo primal space. We are eating too many grains, we are eating too much pasteurized dairy, and we are consuming too many processed foods. And so let's go back to the hunter-gatherer type of template for a diet, which is, meat and seafood that's wild caught, and nuts and seeds and vegetables and plants of all kinds. And just awesome. not so grain heavy, not so, processed food heavy, like we all had been eating out of convenience and pleasure. So that is what led me to eventually becoming a health coach. It's just, I became fascinated. I was following the leader of the Primal movement, Mark Sisson. He eventually started the Primal Health Coach Institute. And I was like, oh my God, this could be a job. I started food blogging. I was sharing my gluten-free recipes. And I was asked to speak at some events about gluten-free and paleo. This was before I was even a health coach. And because of my past being a crowd motivator and just kind of understanding how my ADHD works, I was very comfortable in that setting. I liked presenting my ideas to people and motivating groups of people. Yes. And so I was teaching workshops about nutrition. I was a nutrition consultant for a juice bar in Chicago because they didn't know anyone else that knew paleo recipes or gluten-free recipes at that time. I was so lucky because I didn't really have the qualifications, but they were just nobody knows what you know. At that time, I was into bulletproof and paleo and all this, and the juice bar wanted to have that kind of stuff on their menu, bulletproof coffee? Is that why you got excited? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I was into all that. And so was the owner of this juice bar. And man, that changed my whole life. I realized the potential of this as a career, and food blogging, helped me kind of break into the space digitally. And I was on social media for that reason. And it kind of was a gateway into making health coaching into a career.
Wow. Let's go to food blogging for a second here, because I love that you lived it. You experienced it. You overcame it. You did all of this by self-study, research, and then trying it. And awesome. So massive respect for that. And
Thanks.
Then food blogging. What was your first food blog post? What was that whole experience getting started with that?
It was a lot with ADHD trying to do all that. And it was a WordPress site, and just too many possibilities with a WordPress site, too techie and not visually aesthetically pleasing. And so it was, I had an ADHD coach / therapist that I would talk to on the phone to help me, with all of these goals that I had. And there were lots of tears, lots of crying. It was definitely a challenge, but I had to keep reminding myself that it was a choice. It was for fun. It's not an assignment, nobody's going to fail me if I don't turn it in on time. I had to keep reminding myself, this is supposed to be fun. Why are you stressing yourself out so much? So that was really part of the process for me to be prepared to eventually start my own business. Without that experience, food blogging, first of all, I never would have made the connections I made, and I never would have probably become a coach, but I also wouldn't have learned how to channel my ADHD and my passion into productive work instead of destructive work. And it was really instrumental to me learning how to live at my own pace instead of what the industry and my, colleagues or influencers are showing me. I don't live at that pace. I cannot keep up with the hustle in any of these industries. And so it is a really tough lesson to learn, but also very freeing to just sort of say, I do things differently, and that's okay.
Wow. I'm loving this because there's just so many lessons here. I hope our dear listeners, you're getting a look at this masterclass on how to overcome your own inner narrative, your own dialogue, the stuff inside that's challenging you. And Marisa's found a way by doing something that was incredibly difficult for her, the food blocking to start, but she made great connections. She learned to live at her pace. All of that struggle, kind of quote Ryan Holiday, the obstacle is the way. She went through the middle of it, and that led her to her passion today, where she is impacting on a very high level. So can we go to your book? I'd love to.
Yes.
I see it over your shoulder.
Yes.
I want to ask you about it.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So how did the book come to fruition? I can only imagine it must have been a passion and difficult.
So, it was just one of the ways that I got through all those hard times with ADHD, because I didn't want to be only depending on medication. I didn't want to grow a tolerance to stimulant medication.
Yes.
I realized there's times that it's appropriate to use and times that I'd be better off not using it. And so I was, again, trying to use nutrition and healthy habits to nurture my brain. And so I discovered intermittent fasting because of the bulletproof and paleo communities. And that was, before I became a health coach. So I was using intermittent fasting for my brain. I realized if all of this energy and resources and blood flow is needed to digest food, that's a very energy intensive process, digesting a meal. It's pulling away blood flow, energy, and resources from my prefrontal cortex, where I need all of this energy supplied to get through the workday or to post things on my blog or to self-manage. And so I was fasting kind of makes sense. I should try that for my brain. And it was immediately rewarding and obvious. Fast forward to when I became a health coach and I was doing public speaking. One of the topics I pitched for a Chicago festival was a step-by-step introduction to intermittent fasting. And this was in 2017 or 2018 when nobody was really talking about it. So I didn't think people were going to be interested. And I got all these people out of all my workshops that got the biggest response. People were like, are you going to record it? This, that. And I was like, holy cow, people want to hear about intermittent fasting. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I put that into a free resource and started teaching my step-by-step method. It eventually turned into what I call the reset method, which is the foundation for this entire book. And essentially, I noticed from the very beginning that a lot of people were too rigid with intermittent fasting. There were too many rules. They were trying to be too rigid, and they were jumping into it too hastily without understanding the signals their body was giving to them about when it's appropriate to push and when you need to scale back, or when you need to be flexible to accommodate the other things going on in your life. And so the reset method came about because I was teaching people how to train their body for intermittent fasting so that it was effortless and rewarding every step of the way, instead of like just go without eating and tough it out. Like that's definitely not the way. So reset is an acronym, RESET. Each letter stands for a phase of the method. And anybody can grab this on my website. I think Matt's going to have it in the show notes, but it's marisamoon.com/IF freedom. IF stands for intermittent fasting. And at the top of that page, you can download the reset manual. It's a 26-page guide that explains this acronym. So the R in reset is reduce your carbs. E is eat nourishing foods. S is start with 12 hours. The next E is extend your fast, and the T is thoughtfully adapt. And so as you're beginning to introduce the reset method, you're only starting with 12-hour fast. That, again, to begin with, is new for a lot of people. Like, that's intermittent fasting. I don't have to do 16 hours because all these articles online tell me that's what I need to do. So that's key. If you're not in your 20s or you're not like a healthy man, starting with anything more than your body is ready is going to be destructive and honestly make you want to quit. It's going to be like every other diet you tried and you're going to say it's not for me. Mm-hmm. So we need to train your metabolism, your brain, your body, your schedule. We need to train you for fasting. So we're literally trying to teach your DNA, your genes, to stop depending on glucose for energy and shift back to our preset that we were born with, fat burning. We have this ability that we all have in our DNA to burn body fat for energy. That's what it's there for. But because we've become so carb dependent as a nation of eaters, meaning we have to eat every 2 to 3 hours like they've told us we should. We have grains as the base of our food pyramid, and our meals are usually based on a bowl of rice, a bowl of pasta, or tortillas and bread. And so that has led our metabolisms to be entirely dependent on carbohydrate energy, which means we have to feed it more frequently and means our hunger is out of control. And so one of the greatest things that you will benefit from starting with 12 hours, eating nourishing foods, and gradually reducing your carbs, not going keto, people, that we don't start with keto. We gradually train our metabolism for carbohydrate reduction. So all this time, first of all, you're learning, how do I build my plate without so many carbohydrates? How do I feel without so many carbohydrates? And how does it look when I fast 12 hours? What can I put in my coffee? There's a lot of things to learn as you're going through this. But meanwhile, you're gradually training your body to that carbs aren't going to be that plentiful. So what other fuel sources are there? And as you incrementally extend your fast, you are reducing your carbs at the same time. They make it easier for the other things. So fasting becomes easier because you're reducing your carbs, and reducing your carbs becomes easier because you're fasting. So all in all, these are kind of working together in harmony to make this rewarding every single leg of the race. And you're just transforming your metabolism back to how we were designed to have this dependable energy source that allows us to go 20, 36, 72 hours without food and feel our best. Like nobody expects it. But when you're fasting to the right degree for your circumstances, you feel so much sharper. You have so much more energy. And the most unbelievable thing is you're less hungry.
It's amazing, isn't it? So to someone who is listening to this, who they try to work out, they're fairly fit. Maybe they have a bagel or two for a breakfast. Maybe they have a sandwich in the afternoon. Maybe they have some pasta once or twice a week. I put a lot of maybes in here, but it seems that the carbs just kind of sneak into the diet. So if it's like an average American diet and the carbs are sneaking in, once or twice a day, or maybe more, how do we start to wean off of that when it's just everywhere? And now I'm realizing
it is everywhere.
It's everywhere for a lot of us. So where do we start, Marisa?
Yes. The best places to start are your habits with desserts and sweet drinks, first of all, because that's the biggest bang for your buck. It's going to remove a lot of the pressure metabolically that your body is dealing with to process all of this glucose, all of this sugar. Carbs of any kind, well, not of any kind, but any simple carbohydrates or anything with sugar is converted into glucose into your bloodstream. So if you're having sweet drinks and you're having snacks or desserts that are sweet or carbohydrate based, you are really bombarding your body with this responsibility to clear the glucose from your bloodstream where it's toxic there. It cannot stay there. Your body has to clear it from your bloodstream. And so it prioritizes that above almost anything else except poison. So unless you are consuming alcohol or any other poison, your body is going to prioritize the glucose above all else. And so that's burdensome to have all around the clock, all for decades of your life. And it leads to something called insulin resistance, which is insulin is the hormone and the molecules that moves the glucose out of your bloodstream. And it moves that glucose into your carbohydrate stores or because they're always full, because we're always eating carbs, your carbohydrate stores are full. It converts the extra carbs into fat. And insulin stores the extra carbs as body fat. So a lot of people don't realize, why do I keep gaining weight, or why is it so hard to gain weight? It's because you're never emptying your glycogen stores where the carbs are stored. And then the backup storage is the fat. So how are you going to get to the backup storage if you never even empty the first storage? And so fasting helps you empty that storage because you're running out of all the stored glucose and you're not feeding it more. You're not having more sugar. And finally, insulin is not required and fat can be released from your cells. And so that's where fat burning begins. But a lot of us have struggled to achieve that because we've had low calorie, high carbohydrate methods trying to reach that goal.
And what's interesting to me is I'm hearing you share this, is so many people I know, their method for trying to lose that body fat is, I just need to exercise more. I just need to exercise more. It doesn't have anything to do with the rice or the tortillas or the bread or the simple sugar drink or the simple sugar dessert. They think it's around all the exercise. But what you're sharing is
exercise helps a lot, but it also, you're going to have this vicious cycle of being extremely hungry and craving all these carbs and needing to eat really frequently and then exercising so it's like this compensatory relationship, and your body is going to tell you need more food because you're demanding more energy to exercise. And so your cravings are going to get worse. You're going to reason with yourself, I can have pasta. I worked out today. I can have more dessert because I earned it. And so it's kind of like this, never ending, unsustainable relationship with both food and exercise that ultimately leads a lot of people to eventually burn out from their exercise habit. And then weight gain is relentless. If you can't sustain an exercise habit you are currently maintaining, it's going to eventually bite you in the ass, metabolically speaking, because you can't, you're no longer outputting that energy that you did with the exercise habit. And so your metabolism is going to be just like essentially storing all this food that you now have no use for. So that's one little tidbit about exercise to keep in mind. People exercise their way into like a vacation. I want to lose weight for this vacation. I'm like, only pick up an exercise habit you're willing to maintain as a lifestyle, or you're going to pay for it once you stop exercising.
Wow. So such a deep rabbit hole to dive into, and I love it. We might have to have another
conversation.
So can you hold up your book and show us the full name, and where can we get a copy of it, Marisa?
So here I have my Not So Fast.
Oh, that is a sizable sizable book, and
it is a sizable book.
Yeah, it's got
ADHD-friendly
girth
though.
It's awesome.
So lots of lists, lots of space between paragraphs. White space was really important to me. As someone with ADHD who loves to read, I cannot stand when it's like too dense on one page. I have to read a paragraph over and over and over. Or taking in new information like this, even in our conversation, like it's a lot of new information. And so I knew bulleted lists and short chapters, and very systematized, lessons were critical for the reader to make it to the end of this book. And according to my 125 reviews so far, it is extremely readable, and they really appreciate that. So I took the risk making a book that's 400 and something pages long. A lot of people would have shrunk the font size or shortened the space between paragraphs just so that the book was shorter. But I said, no, I want it to be as readable as possible. And that's why one of the very first chapters is, if you don't read further than this, in case you don't read further than this. So the subtitle is The Smarter, More Gradual Approach to Intermittent Fasting Benefits That Last. So yeah, this is going to teach you a more sustainable path to long-term weight loss and effortless maintenance as part of your lifestyle.
And you can get it right away. I'm looking at your website right now. It's marisamoon.com. And I even put I put a /IF, and it goes straight to the book. You can get the book right here on Amazon, and it's Primal, it looks like. So you can have the book in the next day or so, team. So please check that out. Do you also have a podcast or some other medium that you use to get your voice out there, Marisa?
So my former podcast is the Foundation of Wellness podcast, and it's still everywhere you can find podcasts now. We did 90 episodes of that, and that was before I wrote the book. And so I'm looking forward to soon launching a Not So Fast podcast. That's my goal. I'd like to have a Not So Fast podcast. I'm just looking for a team to help me produce it. And that's kind of a dream to mine, is like really work with others on the podcast to make a production that's not all on me. I fully edited and hosted and planned and booked and everything myself, the former podcast. And I learned, that's a big undertaking, like almost a full-time job. So, meanwhile, I'm on Instagram at Marisa_Moon_. And that's where I try to stay present. I'm going to be recording the audiobook and publishing on Audible, hopefully by the fall. So that's my next focus. But anybody can book one-on-one coaching with me. I strive to keep it affordable for everyone. So I do offer impromptu coaching calls. They're 30-minute coaching calls. You can pick my brain on what your current challenge is. It's only $65 at the time we're recording this. And we can meet and decide if we're compatible. And if you want to have something in a more ongoing relationship, I'm happy to do it whenever I have openings. So
I gotta say, I love your brain and just love the way that things come out in a way I can follow it very easily. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I follow everything you're saying, and the way you're going from here to there, it makes perfect sense to me. It's like a perfect symphony. So this is easy to listen to you. Is there anything else that you want to share or promote before we move to our lightning round to wrap things up today? Yes.
I guess there's not really anything that I need to promote. I just encourage you, if you do decide to read the book, make sure you scan the QR code to get all the free resources, because it's tremendous support for any reader going through this. There's meal examples, there's handy food lists, and all kinds of things that can be really instrumental in helping you making these massive changes in your life. And the title says it yourself. You're not in a hurry this time. We need to be more patient with ourselves as we try to induce change, because nothing in our daily life is consistent. Why would we expect ourselves to be consistent? And so I say it pays off more to be persistent. And that's what's gotten me this far. And I know it can get you far yourself if you persist in your determination to find solutions that work for you.
Wow. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Marisa, this has been a real pleasure. And team, if you go to Amazon and look at this book, Not So Fast, Smarter, More Gradual Approach to Intermittent Fasting Benefits That Last by Marisa Moon. If you go and check it out, it's only $18.99 for a 450-page book full of resources with QR codes. So plenty to help serve your mission, team. If it's health, if it's just looking at your nutrition habits, if it's looking at your energy, I can attest to intermittent fasting has served me and my energy at a high level for some number of years. And I love it. So I just want to recommend, checking this out, especially with Marisa, because she's all right. She's pretty cool. So check out Marisa's book. And Marisa, with that, I got a couple questions to wrap things up, take us home.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. And first is around books. So I want to set a parameter first. It's 1, 2, or 3. 1, 2, or 3 books that have had an impact on you. Get any genre, just the first 3 books that come to mind that are impactful on you could recommend. What do you got?
Essentialism is one of my favorite books of all time by Greg McKeown. And Essentialism, just for anyone who doesn't know what it is excellent for people who are overwhelmed with either things they want to do or things that are expected of them in their time. Essentialism helps you narrow it down, your focus and your efforts to what is absolutely essential and how to define that. And so that became like a theme of my life. And it was very helpful. Also, The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. The alter ego effect is really how to turn on and off, a part of your persona, or an alter ego, if you will, when you need it the most to perform at your best. And so a lot of athletes use this. Beyonce is best known for her alter ego, Sasha Fierce. That's who goes on stage every time. It's not Beyonce, it's Sasha Fierce. And so I really had to lean into that to bring out my best self when I had to do things that were scary for me in my business, or things that didn't feel like aligned, like even selling certain things, or, selling myself. That's something I had to bring out my alter ego for. And I find that book so fascinating. But if we're going to talk about what's fascinating, I have to mention Human Design. Human Design is sort of a personality framework based on a bunch of ancient systems all combined. So the Yi Ching or I Ching or I Ching, Chinese ancient system, astrology, Kabbalah, all sorts of those ancient systems combined to something more modern called Human Design, to understand what our innate gifts are, what our innate shadows can be, like the things that we are struggling with to bring out our gifts and to grow through what we go through. And so I have been endlessly fascinated by Human Design. It is just a rabbit hole of tremendous insights about who you are and what you're here for. And I use that as my North Star. And it's why not be, the subject of our own fascination? Why not allow that to be yourself? So,
wow, amazing! Thank you. Great book. There's great book recommendations. Let's move to music. If there is a genre, an artist, a song, just anything in the musical space that really just lights you up, what might be a sampling of Marisa music?
Wow. I am kind of all over the place. I really love electronic music, EDM, because it's very high energy, and I get into that. I used to work in nightclubs. It's such a fun scene to be a part of. But I also love live bands. So, Incubus, I've seen like 6 times. Incubus, the alternative band. I love like disco, funk, that kind of stuff, bluesy stuff, and indie of all kinds. I love, I'm just like drawing blanks right now, of course, because you got me in this fire round. But I love everybody from like S.G. Lewis to Tove Lo and let's see, Moon Boots. I don't know. There's just so many. Where do I begin? So
yeah. I know where I would begin with my wife. We would go and I just type in the word indie and Spotify gives me a playlist. Mm-hmm. This is how we choose our Boggle songs. So let's see. Ingrid Michaelson, The Way I Am is the first song that just came up on indie. This is the song when I was dating Julie before we got married. This is the song that she sent to me and said, this is our song. So this is the first one that popped up. Wow, that's pretty cool. And we're gonna add
anybody that harmonizes too. I just love that like old Boys to Men style stuff. So I've been listening to this group King's Return on YouTube. Yeah. Highly recommend that.
King's Return. Okay.
Oh, God, the way their voices melt together, I'm like, I cannot even reach this level of satisfaction in any other way.
Wow. King's Return. I've got the artists we're gonna follow and. Yeah, we're going to drop that into Boggle time tonight, too. So thank you. This has been very helpful. We're down to the last question, and you get the last word, Marisa, and here it is. This is the Eternal Optimist podcast. When I say Eternal Optimist, what might that mean to you?
Well, that means you are in a lifelong dedicated pursuit of seeing the glass half full.